Hi, my name is Tim Spees, and this is the A House Divided video series. Thanks for watching these videos which explain why there is so much conflict in the U.S. at this time. In our last video, we continued to clarify the differences between existential beliefs and moral beliefs, and between two basic moral or ethical frameworks, moral objectivism and moral relativism. Everyone has existential and moral beliefs, and they get those beliefs from somewhere. That includes you, dear viewer. For most of history, most people have adopted or chose to believe the moral tenets or rules of their religion. Their religion provided their primary existential beliefs and moral beliefs. People believed there was some being higher, greater, better than human beings, and people believed that being or beings would hold them accountable for our moral decisions in this life. What are moral decisions? Well, deciding how to make a salad is not a moral decision. Deciding how to treat other people is always a moral decision. The traditional existential or religious beliefs about there being a God who provided humanity with moral rules and who held people accountable against those rules is largely being abandoned by the people of the U.S. and for most of the Western world for that matter. Many people no longer believe in the God of Christianity, for example, and are turning to themselves and other people to understand our human existence and what is right and wrong behavior for people. They are abandoning God for their own, quote, human wisdom. That would work out fine if people were basically good. But therein lies the problem. In fact, two fatal problems. First, without a moral standard to judge right from wrong, how can anyone know what a good person is? That is the crux of the matter. Existential beliefs drive moral beliefs, and when people abandon the best existential beliefs for inferior ones, accelerating ruin is always the consequence as the people make wrong judgments about right and wrong based on their own nature and not an objective and superior standard. For the record, the real historical Jesus or Joshua of Nazareth is the best source for moral beliefs, as he provides the creator-given standard for what is right and wrong human behavior. Second, even with the conscience God gave humans and its aid in telling us when we consider or do something wrong, history proves that human beings at best are predisposed to ignore their conscience and harm each other. Due to these two fatal flaws, having a belief that no objective universal moral rules exist and our conscience being an insufficient restraint to wrong behavior, result in what we see in history and each day on this earth. Human beings are not good unless your warped definition of good includes abusing, neglecting, taking from, harming, and killing each other by the billions. So, as people turn away from God, they must have some existential belief to fill the void of rejecting the existence of a creator who will hold us accountable. Many choose the evolutionary fairy tale and its abhorrent ethics. What does the God of evolution teach? Its primary principle is survival of the fittest, meaning the strong eliminate the weak in order to survive. Tragically, the fairy tale of evolution's being people's replacement for God is paving the way for much of the growing conflict and destruction. Evolution's primary principle is survival of the fittest. That principle applied to humans would be for an individual or group to prevail over the weaker individual or groups, including harming or destroying them in order to pass their genes on to the next generation. That is what the God of evolution teaches. Really, the humans who dreamed it up teach. There is no compassion or love associated with survival of the fittest, the very things that the human race needs the most. So, as people turn away from a God belief, they are left with a vacuum of moral knowledge and thus an uninformed conscience. Unfortunately, our conscience is not strong enough to overcome our will and the pull of the darkness within us. So, people are turning to themselves and the moral frameworks they invent, which are not grounded in a superior and objective source, God. but rather are grounded in their own darkness-influenced thoughts. You're seeing the evidence of that now in the U.S. So let's take a look at the darkness that is moral relativism and the darkness-created moral frameworks that are its children, which frameworks have no higher than human perspective from which to judge rightness or wrongness. The overall belief or philosophy of relativism claims there is no objective reality higher than or outside of what humans create for themselves. This belief is false, and a simple test will prove that. Here would be a fair and accurate statement that represents the core belief of relativism. Quote, "There are no objective, universal, or absolute truths that can be known, shared, or applied among all human beings," unquote. But when you ask the relativist who uttered that statement, does your statement convey an objective, universal, or absolute truth that applies to all human beings? The question in that legitimate form leaves them with only two reasonable answers, yes or no. If they answer yes, then there is at least one universal truth, and thus their statement is false. If they answer no, then they admit that relativism is false, since there are objective, universal, or absolute truths that exist. Either answer proves that relativism as a worldview attempting to represent reality is false, and thus should be abandoned by the people who value truth. So, we have proved that existential or truth relativism is false. What about moral relativism? Here would be a fair and accurate statement that represents a core belief of moral relativism. Quote, "It is wrong, regarding some moral matter, to tell someone they are morally wrong," unquote. Please think about that for a moment. Clearly, it is a self-defeating statement or an inherently contradictory statement, and thus it represents a false view of reality. Those who utter some form of that statement are contradicting themselves when they make that statement, because they are telling someone that they are wrong while saying it is wrong to tell someone that they are wrong. Next, think about the conflict in the U.S. today and ask yourself, isn't much of the conflict occurring because certain people are saying to others some form of, quote, "It is morally wrong to tell someone they are morally wrong," unquote. So, for example, someone says, quote, "I believe it is wrong or delusional for a man to believe he is a woman," unquote. And the person with relativistic-based ideology responds, "You are wrong to say those men are wrong about being a woman," unquote. Or, as another example, someone says, "Homosexual marriage is wrong and destructive to a society," unquote. The person with relativistic-based ideology responds, "You are wrong to say that homosexual marriage is wrong." Those with relativistic ideology often don't stop with just contradicting themselves by telling others they are wrong, but usually bring condemnatory judgments like, "and you are evil for having those beliefs." They do this because they are fighting hard against the created order of which truth is a fundamental part. These simple truths just presented prove that both existential and moral relativism are false, and that an objective reality exists. I propose that the objective reality that we find ourselves in was created by God, and that God gave his messenger, the real historical Jesus or Joshua of Nazareth, to tell us what is actually right and wrong. So, dear viewer, it is highly likely that you or someone you know hold to relativist beliefs as identified in this video. That would mean that those people have a false view regarding a key aspect of reality. Do you want to be walking around believing false things? Do you care if others you know are walking around believing false things about reality? Generally speaking, those who have false beliefs about reality do not do well and engage in behavior to try and hide that wrongness. Behavior like believing or claiming they are tolerant people, even as they express hatred or animosity, yell at, get mad at, seek to cancel and condemn those who oppose their views or expose their false views. In our next video, we'll take a close look at the two popular beliefs of moral relativism. Those are subjective relativism and cultural relativism, and demonstrate that they are false and harmful views. Thanks for watching this video. Please share this and other Peaceful Revolution videos with others and keep an eye out for more to come. More importantly, please contact the Peaceful Revolution to start serving the King and his kingdom.